Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Game Junk Podcast, episode 158, recording on Sunday, July 9th, 2023. My name is Frank.
My name is Sean.
And my name is Andrew.
And we're changing it up this week. We have a very special guest, someone we all know, Paul Caparici from Creative Byte Studios. And Creative Byte Studios has just released a new game, Return to Grace. We've talked about it on the show before. So we all replayed the game. We're going to talk about it a bit. And Paul, how's it going? Nice to see you.
Great. It's great to be back. It's been, I think, the Rock Band and Halo Reach was the last time.
Yeah.
So
Oh, wow.
it's nice to be back.
We loved Halo Reach.
We sure did, and Rock Band too. So.
Oh, I still play Rock Band
Yeah.
all the time. So
Was that like episode 8? Like that was a damn long time ago.
It was.
Yeah.
So we all worked together at Silicon Knights for quite a while, all on the same team. And then I worked with Paul on Embers of Miram. He's rocking the Embers of Miram t-shirt. If you're watching on
The video,
youtube.com/Game Junk. And yeah, so Return to Grace, an adventure game, would you say?
Yeah, we like to say narrative venture, but other people like to say walking simulator. So
Okay.
whatever works.
So why don't you talk a bit about the game? Or
Sure. Yeah. It's just
Okay.
it's basically you're a space archaeologist coming to find this like long lost god Grace who kind of ruled the solar system. And essentially when you get there, you kind of try to find out why she was shut down. And along the way, you meet with these fractured versions of ourselves of all these different personalities in an efforts to kind of bring her back online so it's kind of like a mystery kind of thing, and exploration, utopian space, kind of retro future, all those kinds of themes.
Cool. And we should mention the other people who worked on the game as well.
Yeah, so Creative Byte Studios, we're in Niagara, and a pretty small team. So I do the programming and the production, and Sean Jackson, he does all art. So he did all the art in the game, basically, and one artist. And Dave Evans, who we worked with on The Veil as well as Shadow Crown. He did all the writing and a lot of the design work. And then we had some interns from the local colleges and universities that kind of helped us. And then Giancarlo Feltrin did the music, and we used all like Toronto ACTRA voice talent, which has kind of been something that people have commented on how much they've enjoyed their like world class voice talent in Toronto for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I think the voice acting is excellent across the board, especially I would say the protagonist Addie is exceptional. So the game is an adventure game. The challenges are pretty simple. It's narrative based. You're going on a journey. There's a mystery as to what this place you go to is. What's the name of the planet again?
Yeah, it's Ganymede. It's a real planet. It's one of the moons of Jupiter.
Oh shit, I didn't even know that.
You
Pretty
didn't
cool.
recognize Jupiter at the end of the game there, Frank?
No, I saw Jupiter and I saw the statue of Jupiter and all that stuff, but I didn't know about Ganymede. So I'm a little embarrassed. That's fine. And you are interacting with these different AIs, solving puzzles, learning about this place, this AI and what's going on. So my favorite part of the game, I love the art style. What you had initially showed me pitches, and we should probably say we all did play testing on it. I've seen the game in various stages of development. And one of the key features originally was the art style and this kind of technicolor 70s sci-fi look, including like the architecture and decoration in the game, like a kind of 70s art deco, but futuristic. And I think that's exceptional. And like the look and vibe of the game, including the music. Giancarlo did the music. It's so good. It's not like overpowering, but when it's there, it's like really effective. So that stuff's awesome. But I really enjoy.
I jump in on that?
Yeah.
On the like, so kind of one of the things when just looking at stuff, it's a lot about like making something unique, right? And something stands out visually too, because that's almost your like biggest marketing thing is basically what people see, right? So a big thing that we were looking at when we were thinking about this game and other kind of games was there's so much like dystopian retro future stuff. You see it like in BioShock and kind of lots of things like that. So we wanted to try to be like more of a utopian kind of, and even like the whole beat of the game where AI is generally like the HAL kind of idea. So we really wanted to like explore, I guess, the other side and why, like, you know, like an empathetic god might be not a good thing for humans.
Yeah. And so you kind of go through the stories. I should say it's on Steam. It's just on Steam
And the Epics and
and
the
Epic
Epic Game
Store.
Store. Yeah.
Okay. And so that's where it is right now. And the reviews, the Metascore is pretty solid, 81.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not a ton of reviews, but they're all really positive, and I would concur with those. I enjoyed it even more on my last playthrough. It's been polished up a bit, and I'm not good at comprehension necessarily, and this isn't my favorite genre, but playing it this time, I really felt I got the story and wasn't missing anything, and I really enjoyed it. Sorry, I'll go to Sean and Huck. Any questions from you guys?
Well, I wanted to jump back to one of the first things that Paul said. So you mentioned the walking simulator thing, and I was just curious if you feel that that's like an insult almost, because I do find it hard to describe these kind of games, and it, like, functionally that does make sense, but I also feel like it's not totally fair to what the games are.
Yeah. I don't get
Sorry, I was going to ask the same question because I followed an achievement guide that someone posted on Steam when I was playing today, and they called it a walking simulator. And I also don't think it's a bad thing, but I'm curious what Paul thinks.
Yeah. So for me, it's like we just want people who kind of enjoy these kind of games to play these kind of games. So if it's not your cup of tea, don't play it. So I don't take offense to the nickname of the genre or whatever. As long as it means, and I think our Steam review scores, like it's like 92 or 93% as well, which is, I think, means that like our audience, we're getting the right audience to play it. We only, like, one bad review is like, clearly this game's not for me. So like we didn't do a good enough job in our text or video, or maybe they didn't just read it at all, because most people kind of get the sense of what the game is. So I think it's just like any kind of other thing, as the games industry keeps evolving and expanding, there's just more genres, right? Like in film or whatever. And this is just yet another one that isn't for everyone, but is for a lot of people. It really is an accessible game kind of thing. And I think that might be a little bit of a backlash from Embers of Miram internally, where we made such, like, it was painful watching people like not be able to play the game. And it's like, you should be able to play this game
Yeah.
on either walkthrough, but
two approaches. Think harder about what you're doing, or don't think as much with what you're doing. Everyone was kind of different with how they approached it.
Yeah.
Can I jump in on that? Because I was going to ask about, it's such a departure from Embers of Miram, which was like this twin stick kind of action game, to action platformer, to a walking simulator. Quite a juxtaposition of style. So was it just like the response from Embers that brought this on, or like how did this idea develop after Miram, and what kind of brought it on?
Yeah. So a lot of factors, but I'll start with kind of something I've read before that really resonated with me. And it's like, there's like a Venn diagram when you're making a game. There's like three really important things. One, you want to make a game that you want to make, because it's hard, right? Like, you go to make a game, you have ups and downs and all those kinds of things. And then you want to make a game that you can make. So like, do you have the right team for that and everything like that? And then this is the most important part, and the part that has been a lesson as an indie game developer versus working at Silicon Knights for 10 years, is you have to make a game that people want to play. So after Embers of Miram, where like, it's still like, that's a pretty positive game. Like, our Metacritic score was good, and like, it was our first kind of game and everything like that. But in terms of the, like, what kind of game can you make? So we worked with Dave on the Veil, and we were thinking about including him on the next game. And Frank, was a huge part of Embers of Miram, right? And he wasn't around anymore. So guys know Frank's kind of thing about more gameplay. So we kind of lost that. So we kind of got a narrative person and didn't have a gameplay person. And so kind of just looking at what I thought our team could kind of best do. And then we just looked at the market, and it was kind of like, Frank, we definitely didn't know about the platform or market in terms of like what you needed to be successful in that market is very challenging. So we looked at like other games like this where we're like, you know what? It might not have a huge high ceiling, even though like Firewatch did, but at least the floor was better. And you just see it because it's like a shorter game, so we just get more reviews, more press playing it. It's because it's like, hey, like it's funny because you're so worried. In Embers of Miram, we got flack on like a 6-hour game kind of thing like that. And again, this is
Yeah.
like a perception thing. And I was really worried about this game too. It's like it's a 2.5, 3, whatever hour game. But like no one really complains about that because they know like that's what it is. And when we pitched it to people, like most of the people, publishers or whoever we talk to, they're kind of around our age kind of thing. And they're like, yeah, I like these games. I don't have 100 hours, or I need to play a bunch of games. I got this huge backlog. Like, so they're like totally down with this whole 2.5 hour kind of experience, where you can play it and experience it, enjoy it, and then move on after that. So kind of we thought that was appealing to us, like at our lifestyles. But
Geriatric gamers.
that's right. Well, 20 years I've been doing this. So you do feel that when you talk to publishers and they're younger than you are often, or things like that. But yeah, so it's like a combination of all those kind of factors that thought, okay, maybe this is like a better thing for us. And like we're started working on our next project, and that's kind of different as well, as we kind of just like feel out what we're good at, what there's an audience for. Yeah, the key to indie development is staying alive. That's the key.
Yeah, so we should say Paul like does a lot of the programming and technical stuff, but also is like the producer director of how things are happening, and he's really good at that. And he knows, and I think I'm speaking for him, but he plays into his team's strengths for sure. And I think even with 2D games, those art styles tend to be pixel based or something drastic, and Sean is an amazing like 3D artist, modeler. The skyboxes he does and stuff like that are amazing. So I feel like part of this, doing a first person game and something in 3D, was also like letting his stuff shine a bit more as well.
100%. And another like interesting thing that happened along this process too was, so we started production, and it was not going great to get the art quality that we were looking for. We just couldn't hit the velocity that we wanted for a small team and everything like that. And then Unreal announced the whole, you have to make $1 million to give them royalties. And that really gave us pause to think about that. And even making the game, as you guys know, when you play it, there's a lot of like, there's not as much systems, right? It's kind of like there's a lot of like, I'm not going to call them one-offs, but they kind of are. And doing it in Unity just didn't feel like the right tool. So I spent a month basically like assessing, like bringing it over and being like, should we switch engines? And it was going pretty well until we kind of said, yep, let's do this, maybe it's like 25% into production. And then like our velocity took off. And for like a whole number of reasons. One, because they have like all this built-in like game like systems, like you can get a player walking around, you don't have to deal with any of that stuff. So it's like, yeah, I had to like, write a dialogue thing using other graph-based plugins anyways. We didn't get stuck as much because we had all the source code, so we could debug things. They have that whole Quixel Megascan, so they have all those assets. And it's not that we used a lot of those assets, but we used a lot of the materials. So Sean would make like these like interesting like couch, like a retro future couch or a terminal, whatever.
The elevator
like,
in the crane room is amazing. Like,
yeah. So all that stuff is like, but then he was able to find materials, so he didn't have to go and like find textures and build them and all this kind of stuff. So like that Megascans, that gave us like a ton of stuff there too. And then like performance wise, like we barely did anything, or it was super easy for the most part. And like we're running like on high PCs, low PCs, all that kind of stuff. So that kind of just worked out like for us, like that was kind of like, I guess, an added bonus kind of thing. So yeah, and again, this isn't like a Unreal's better than Unity kind of thing. It was just the kind of game we were making. It just turned out to be a better tool for us.
Yeah, and I mean, like on Unity, performance stuff on Miram, like you did a lot of amazing stuff.
Yeah, and it was
Going with the
again, it was
loading.
sorry, and again, it was a lot of it was like if the profiler doesn't tell you, and I don't have source code to change or to add, I'm like talking to a black box. So as a programmer, it's really a tough, right?
It's mono behavior start is the problem, right? Like
you got it. Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
So-
as someone who talks with a lot of people who are trying to put their games on consoles, like all the requests I'm getting now are Unreal. Like you're not the only one that's switching to Unreal, especially with UE5 coming out. Like you said, the Quixel Mega Scans, all the like the Geo they give you for free, the like landscape tools, the MetaHuman stuff now, the MetaHuman animator that just dropped, like just incredible tools that if you were to try to build this yourself, it would take years. And if you were trying to get it in Unity, you'd have to buy some subpar thing and then twiddle with it yourself and try to figure out how to make it better. And it's just a lot of people are making that switch.
Yeah,
for the exact reasons.
The whole engine thing has been fascinating, right? So like after like Graham left Silicon Knights because we worked together, we were really close, and he left a bit before me, and so they had to make their own engine because those options weren't available, right? So but they had 3 programmers that could kind of like do that and focus on it, and it affected what.
All right, I'm just gonna say Graham has been on previous episodes.
Yeah, sorry.
It's okay. One of the founders of Drinkbox Studios that made Guacamelee and Severed.
Yeah. So for them, they were kind of like at the start of that whole indie thing where like that's what you had to do. So like to see kind of like where game engines have come, that and digital distribution are the best and worst things that have happened to indie developers, because now like anyone can make a game, anyone can put a game on a store. So now like you're competing with like there's just a lot of noise out there, whereas before, like if you were on Steam, there was only so many games, like you knew you had a floor, so it's just kind of like how our industry in the past 20 years is just like continually changing and will continually change.
So on that,
sorry, go.
No, it's okay. On that topic, even when we released Embers of Miram, which is like, was that 6 years ago now or something?
2017, I think.
Yeah. So it was hard to get eyes on it, to get reviewers and stuff like that. And like you said, there's even more competition now and more games. How has that been with this game versus Miram? And have you learned anything from that? Or
yeah, so and I guess like even our launch thing was like we had to launch basically at the end of May, because they're like, guys, if you don't launch then, like it wasn't ready before then. Like we had a PR company, and they're like, no one's going to be interested. Everyone's all like, I was supposed to be on the show like for the last 4 weeks. I was like, guys, you have news every single week, right? There's like the Xbox thing, there's a PlayStation thing, the Nintendo, like just June is like just information thing. So everyone's just focused on that. No one has time for reviews or anything like that. And then they were like, after that too, it kind of turns into like it's really hard to even like find a window, I guess. But still, you can't just launch whenever you want kind of thing, or no one will review your game kind of thing. So like what did we learn from that to this? One thing is like to try to market earlier, which we didn't do, by the way. We talked to the PR thing and they're like, no, it's okay, we can just do a short little thing, and like it'll be quick and they'll know about it and they'll review it right away, because it's like it's not too long. And it did work out. Like we got enough reviews for a Metacritic, which is kind of hard. Like getting a Metacritic period is hard because there's just so many games, and then getting an 81 on top of it is like great, because those 70s are so easy to get. It's so easy to get a 7 out of 10. We have reviews that are like the nicest reviews ever and 7 out of 10. And then we have reviews that are like 90 where they're like, it's okay. I'm like, but so it's just like, it's such a subjective thing, right? But it affects your score so much.
Yeah, I guess
Well,
just with
yeah.
Medium as well, the type of game it was that you talked about already, like the reviews would go from like 5 out of 10 to 10 out of 10
Yeah.
based on whether they, and this is like you said, it's much more defined and there's not a lot of variation in like what people think about the game, which
The
is
worst
nice.
thing I ever did in Embers of Miram that backfired was I tried to get like a big name reviewer. I'm like by using a connection or whatever. And then they're like, oh yeah, we'll get them to review it. They reviewed it and they gave us like a set.
6.
It was probably a 6. Yeah. And it's,
Destructoid, right?
yeah. And it was like because they were forced to review a game that they didn't want to review. So I'm like, I don't care anymore. Just like be like, this is the game. Like, please know that going in. And there's lots of reviewers that wanted to play this kind of game and that have been talking about it on podcasts and yeah, convincing other people and everything. But there's people that don't too, and that's totally cool.
It's interesting with the Metacritic score and stuff, because like it's obviously important. You think about like some of the bigger games, like anything that's like a known quantity, and if they come out and they get a couple good reviews out there, other people are going to start following suit. They're going to be like, oh, this game's getting good buzz, I got to play it. And then they're already in their head thinking, oh, this is a good game. But when it's like a completely unknown game, it gets tough, right? Because people just don't know. They have no gauge for like where this game should fall. And you'd think critics should just be able to say what they feel, but it's hard. And
Almost
so
like people ride that critical wave, eh, Sean?
yeah, exactly. It happens.
Like
I
Zelda,
guarantee
10
you
out
it
of
does.
10, no matter what. Everyone, it's a 10 out of 10. Let's get real.
But I mean, obviously, it can hurt you in the sense that you come to a game expecting it to be a 10 out of 10, and maybe it's not.
Yeah, and then
you're more harsh or whatever.
True. Very true.
But yeah, I don't know. Like, is that, I guess, for you just trying to get the game into the hands of the right people? Or like, was that even what you were trying to do this time? It was just you're waiting for people to come to you and ask for review copies, or
No. We had a PR company that was targeting. I guess my whole
Okay.
point about all that thing was really to like target your like audience or your reviewers or whatever. Like from a marketing perspective, it's just like God, when we worked at Silicon Knights, what were we thinking about? Like we were thinking about the audience or anything like that. And now it's like you have to be like laser focused, which is why like an early access, if you can get that ball rolling, works so well because your audience is right there. They're literally telling you what like is good or whatever. Like you have them, and then they can tell their friends. And like word of mouth has always been the best way, right? I mean, that's what this podcast is generally, right? You're telling people things that you guys are enjoying, and I listen to it all the time, and I hear games all the time that I don't play as many games as you guys, but I find out games that I'm like, I might like that one because you guys are like sorting through the.
I know what Huck's thinking.
Yep.
Kaze and the Wild Mask.
Oh, well, that too. I was also thinking I don't play as many games as Frank. That's what I was thinking.
I just before we leave the technical stuff, I just have this is as
Sure.
technical as I'm going to get. I'm just curious. So, Unreal's visual scripting is called Blueprint.
Mhm.
How much Blueprint did you use versus you coding stuff yourself?
Yeah, like way more than I thought I would. But again, I think it depends like on the project. So like for our next project, which is a little bit more system heavy, it's more stuff in C++. But because there were so many like again, like one-offs like the jetpack or even like those keypads and stuff like that, they were fine to make in that. And then things like the interaction system, so going to an interaction, so we had different types of like we call them like interaction phases. So like one might be like an aim, right, where it's like listening for a stick. And one might be like like moving your hand across like and pressing a button kind of thing. So those were like phases that we wrote in C++, and then they were reused in lots of interactions that we like assembled in Blueprints. So like I think a big difference, like Unity, it's like things are kind of all over the place a little bit. Like you've got this file and then you point to this and this, where it's like in the Blueprint, like everything's kind of in there. It's kind of self-contained. Like it's this kind of object, and then you drop it in and you're like, okay, I want to expose this to design, this to design, and then they can just fill in the where they want, and you'd be like, stay away from the blueprints, don't touch the blueprints, like just you can just edit the variables that are exposed to you in the level. So there's like this like hierarchy of like in the editor, or sorry, in the level editor, then there's like the blueprints, and then there's C++. So we kind of like
Yeah, for
I
sure.
was able to like enforce some sort of like yeah, like
Just workflow or
flow
like
and
responsibility, 'cause-
yeah, and it's just, and certain things it was easier to write and debug and do things in that, and then other times it wasn't. So it's like it's this it's like it's just a sense you get on like, should I, at what level should I put it in? And it's like, as you just keep working on the game and making the game, you kind of like realize it's like, oh, this should live here, or this should live here, or it's an intuition, I guess is the word I was looking for. That's what kind of develops.
Nice. I love blueprints. I use them more than anyone I know, and whenever I hear of other programmers using them, I get all excited.
Yeah, it can go bad in a hurry, especially if you don't use them properly.
That's-
So you have to be
yes.
like disciplined in them. But it's like, it's so like Unity has like at least like a coroutine or something to do something where it's like that's kind of hard to do in C++ to do some sort of like step kind of thing. But like that's where blueprints are really nice. It's like you can do like a little timeline here and then do a delay and do it like, so you kind of have a progression. Like if you want to make the lights flicker and then do this and this and this, it's just like it's just so easy and allows you to do it. And really it's all about iteration. That's kind of the thing, you know, we learned from working on like the Konami engine to like our own, and the progression of that is like the faster you can iterate anyone really, the better the game's going to be, basically.
For sure.
One last Unreal question, kind of tied to the art. So you said Sean was using a lot of textures and materials.
From the Quixel mega scans. Yeah.
Okay, because I was like, when I was playing the game today, I'm like, there is a lot of modeling going on in this game. Like, so I don't know, like, did you use any other models, or was it mostly all Sean, like creating models himself? Because
Yeah, but no, it's mostly like a lot of that stuff, like those like walls, or like if you thought around like around the planters, like so the plants were from like one of
Okay.
those Quixel packs, but then he would do all like that trim, and that would be all like unique modeling. But then like if it had like, you know, like a copper finish around it or whatever, he could use that, the cost like a copper
Yeah.
material from the Quixel, and then I'm gonna use a stucco material here and kind of like assign that. So it was kind of a thing where because they weren't like crazy detailed models, he could really like make them really quick, and they just like went in and looked good kind of
Yeah,
thing.
you know they're gonna play well with the lighting engine too, right?
Mhm,
Like that. So
yeah, which is why he was like, it wasn't a sell on the art department to switch over to that, because it just makes their job easier for the type of game we're trying to make.
I got a question about how long the project took. I know Embers of Miriam came out 2017, we said. So when did you guys kind of like, how long did you prototype for? How long was production? Sort of, what was the timeline of this game? I know you guys were working on the Veil and some other probably contracts.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, so we tried another concept after that. We just couldn't find the fun in the timeline that we're looking at. So which is always like disappointing. But you know, you don't want to get into production like unless you're ready to like see it through kind of thing like that. There's nothing worse than like canceling a game. So I'd rather cancel it like at the prototype or the demo stage and just make sure you're happy. So it was kind of a bunch of those kinds of things. So we did that. We helped out on other like Phantom Compass, some of their projects. We helped Dave with the Veil. So it was, and then just because it's like we wanted to be ready kind of thing. So then we did this one, and even in coming out of concept, I'm not like 100% happy with what we had, and looking back at it, it's a little bit embarrassing, but it's also like a skill to get better at learning how to like make games and make them like quickly. And it's like it's so subjective. Like it's just like, where do you go? It's like you're like standing in like I don't even know how to describe it. Like just like this big open world, and it's like, what's the right path to take? And you kind of like, because that's where we're at in our next project right now. So it's kind of like you just keep asking yourselves. You try to make goals and like and like set these like stakes and be like every day, are we working on the right thing? Are we doing the right thing? So I think that's like another like process that again we weren't at Silicon Knights. I just did what I was told. Like I have to make it in Metal Gear. Well, in Metal Gear, it was already I was just following the template of a game that already existed anyways, right? Kind of thing. So that was pretty easy as a programmer. So but when you're like the project director kind of thing like that, then it's like a lot of responsibility and a lot of skills that we just haven't learned. And it's just you kind of do it over and over. So I know that wasn't your question, but I just think I don't know if your audience is interested, but like it's just it's a really hard time, that concept part, and it was even on Grace, of finding. You guys saw a lot of the early iterations where it's like at first you could switch people. So it's kind of a little bit more puzzly, like who should help me in this case or who should help me on this thing. And then we kind of found it was way better if they were just more like backseat drivers, or like the movie Split. We were kind of like inspired by that after, to be like, what if it's just like all these like crazy personalities, and each that are kind of like chiming in and trying to tell you like, you should do this, you should do this, you should do this. Because one thing we didn't really talk about yet is like you can choose different things to do with different AIs, and that affects your relationship with them and affects kind of how they see you at the end of the game, and things like that. And that's something that I think for a narrative adventure game is important, right? You want to make it feel like it's not just like this linear experience, that you can kind of have choices matter, basically. Yeah, rambly, sorry.
That's okay. I was just gonna, before you go, Sean, I was just gonna say, speaking on that of like the personalities and stuff, there was also a lot of little subtleties you guys put in that played to that as well. And I'm thinking of a specific sequence in the garden where you're supposed to hold your breath. And I was like, I'm gonna punk this game. I'm just gonna hold the button down for as long as I can. And you guys, thought of that and put in little extra dialogue to be like, all right, bud, like you can let go of the button or whatnot.
There's
like,
an achievement for if you keep holding it.
That's
oh,
right.
is there? Oh,
Yeah.
see, I didn't cheat like you.
Follow that guide, bud.
And so Andrew, that comes from playtesting, basically,
Yeah.
which is like another lesson learned on Embers of Miriam, where it's like we did playtest, like we did a good job. We used the Niagara College students, and it was better than if we did nothing, kind of thing like that. And on this game, we did it more, and I hear Grim talking about this all the time. You never do it enough, and we didn't do it enough either. But we did better in the last game, and something you just want to kind of keep improving on, because the earlier you can kind of get the game kind of done and get it to playtesting, and then to iterate on what's important and what's resonating with people, and that's kind of where you'll have a much better game in the end. Because it's a crazy process if you see the game at these different stages, right? And how much it can change.
Yeah, on Embers of Miriam, that was my biggest takeaway too. With the playtesting, we were very specific with our target audience of like people who love platformers, right? And we, in retrospect, we probably should have expanded it to people who kind of like them, or just see what someone who hates platformers thinks of the game and take that kind of information from them, because we definitely catered it to people who are really good, which made the game lean hard, I would say, for most gamers. So
yeah, it's hard enough, right, Frank? Like in terms of like an accessibility, like audience wise kind of thing. You can, if you're like really focused on that, and like the games do that. But for an indie developer, it's like, I think you kind of want to make your game as accessible as possible to the biggest audience. Yeah,
we found like kids really liked the game when we took it to shows and stuff like that. It's like,
for sure, and they were good at it too. Yeah.
So that's definitely a big thing. But early access is another great part of that too. If you can get in there, because you get playtesting people who want to play test your game voluntarily, pay to play test your game, basically.
So that, like, we didn't do it for
Yeah,
this
of course,
game because it doesn't really make sense for this kind of game, because it's not the kind of game. So like every kind of every kind of game is different and every kind of like market's different. And I think I heard you guys talking about the last time about Rogue, what was it, what was the Rogue one, the Rogue
Rogue Legacy.
yeah, right. And you're like about the classes or something like that, and it's like, well, that's, yeah, but it's for people who keep playing all the time, right? So it's like you have to pick a class and then you got to get good at it, and that's good for people who want to keep playing games like that. But what if you're not that kind of, what if you're like Dwy guy, right? You don't have time for that. So like
Dabbling.
Okay.
it's
You're
just
dabbling.
yeah, right. So it's just like every kind of genre and game has its own kind of like pros and cons and its own ways to like market and all those kinds of things. So you kind of have to like become an expert, I guess, on it.
So I forgot to jump off Huck because he brought up the breathing and holding your breath as long as you can. And my observation from a design perspective in the game is from my experience, there are no failure states. You
That's
can't
right.
die and restart. Was that a conscious decision? And like, was that hard to do?
Yeah, so it was hard to do. Yes, it was a conscious decision. Yes, because once you kind of open that bag of worms, it's like bag of worms. But anyways, once you go down that road, I guess, it's just it was just like, let's just try not to. I guess is kind of what we thought, and yeah, it did make it difficult. But again, overreaction to Embers of Miriam. It's like we don't want it to be hard, but like we don't want anyone to fail, and we didn't want to make it too easy either, or like just going through the motion. So it was we're trying to walk that, and sometimes I think what we tried to do is we tried to make the player feel smart if they like discovered something early, but if they didn't, it was okay. We would kind of give them the answer later. So that really required a lot of like playtesting to kind of find the right balance there, so people didn't feel cheated, but they didn't feel frustrated.
Yeah, I think in my playthroughs on various iterations of the game, that's the thing I noticed. Like
Mhm.
the timing that help would come, removing puzzles that people couldn't figure out, like the theremin, which was really cool, but I think people struggled with how to like do the notes and stuff like that. So, yeah, as Graham has said before, and we repeat often, the idea of reducing friction, the play testing and iteration just gives you more chance to reduce friction for the player.
Yeah, and just like make it tight. Like it's more important, right? Like that you have a tight like pacing for like 2.5 hours than like extending it or something like that by an hour because we put a hard puzzle in there or something like that that everyone gets stuck at. Like that's no good.
Hero shit. We don't need it.
Definitely. Well, I was going to ask about the puzzle stuff too, and you kind of already covered it there. But the one thing that playing through it again, I noticed now, it almost seems like there's a thematic tie to that idea of like you can't fail the puzzles, that that because, and I don't know if the ending changes. I mean, that's something else I noticed on this playthrough is that, as you said, there are some things that different paths you can take and stuff. But was that part of the intention as well? Because like there's this, I don't want to spoil anything, but there's kind of this idea, I guess, of humanity like not being challenged.
Yeah, 100%. So yeah, we cut, it was perfect. Once we kind of had all these different AIs, we kind of played on that, right? So if a puzzle was too hard, we gave you like a cheat, but there was a consequence to that cheat because now you're reliant. You're not you don't take as much, you're not as determined kind of thing. We had these different like traits under the hood like that we would like be assigning scores to, and that would affect kind of what happened in the end. So at least you could take it out, or you had opportunities where even if you wanted to, because you didn't care or you wanted to side with that AI or whatever, it's like you could do that. So I guess that narrative gave us the opportunity to allow the player to kind of do that, or if they wanted to try to figure it out on themselves, and then they could too, and that would also kind of affect how the AIs saw them.
So I'm going to take off on that. And so you're interacting with all these AIs, and it's a first person game. And to me, my favorite part of the game, or the thing I'm like, this is super cool, is your actual device, which has a screen where the different AIs, you can see which one is talking to you, when they're talking, some emotive stuff from the AIs, as well as like the gyroscope and the tracker, and all these things are integrated into your left arm, I think, kind of like a Pit Boy or something from Fallout, but it's in the game and in the context of the game. And to me, that like is the biggest success design wise and maybe user experience wise. I think that works the entire way through the game. And I know you experimented with a lot of
A
stuff.
lot, a
So
lot.
I think the final version you ended up with really works well. And
Yeah, they didn't have faces until pretty recently.
Yeah.
And that was kind of a comment on, especially if you didn't play without subtitles, it was hard to follow which AI was talking. We did do colored screens, but that was not enough. It was the
Yeah, I
actual
think
trying to
the shape
give,
of the eyes, every AI's
yeah.
eye
So we,
shape, right? That stuff
yeah.
helps a lot.
So it actually, once we kind of, we were like, what is the most extreme thing we could do here to like make this obvious, right? In your face, and then let's dial it back. And so it was the faces, and then we just stuck with it. So it was like, it was kind of fine when we were trying to like figure that. But yeah, you just have to like experiment, right? And see what works and what doesn't work. And that device, there were like really cool designs that we had and we even modeled that yeah, just because it wouldn't work anymore functionally or whatever, kind of never saw the light of day. But I guess yeah, like it's just trying to find that answer earlier would have been good, I guess, kind of thing. But that's game development, right?
Cool.
So I was wondering, I mean, we've been talking about that this game's all about AI and everything. It seems very timely right now.
I know, and we started 3 years ago.
Yeah, like was that like when you started it, was this conversation happening in the public
No.
consciousness? No, not
No, can
really.
you believe that? Like it's just like it was like we were like 6 months away from launch, and like all of this stuff is happening, and we're just like, it's got to be a good thing, right? Like, kind of on the wave of that. So yeah, no, it was it was always kind of yeah, that just like we wanted to explore the idea of like a positive AI and how that might not be the best thing. So I guess that's kind of where we're thinking at the beginning, and now it's the conversation, right? It's really opened up to the whole world with what's going on.
And a lot of that boils down to luck in game development too, right? So
100%.
you do platformers, then you find out, oh, that market's saturated or people are sick of it by the time you release. And then others, like every game now we talk about this is like a Hades game with a different art style or Vampire Survivors clone or something like that. So having good fortune like that is to, or being able to see what genres might have a resurgence can be huge. And there's no real skill to that.
Yeah, with Embers of Miriam, there's like a perfect example there where it's like, well, we're gonna do the console, like the Xbox, the PlayStation, and the Switch wasn't out yet, and Unity couldn't even run it. So we were like waiting for like Unity to run it. And then so we couldn't even hit the window, like the launch kind of window, or like the early kind of thing where it's like, we want to get in, we want to get in. There's not that many people that are on this platform. So like once the Unity had their version that wouldn't crash when when we died, then we're like, we jumped in, we made that port kind of right away. And we that was our best selling platform by far. And we put a demo out on that platform, and we had hundreds of thousands of downloads on that demo. And on the other platforms, like we put demos out and nothing compared to that. And what is that? It's like it was just the timing. It was the right time. There weren't a lot of demos. There weren't a lot of games on there, and it was the right audience, right? In retrospect, duh, right? That like platformers, like people who have Switch would
Yeah,
like
and
that
on the
kind of.
eShop on Nintendo, it has a demo button, which is nice.
Mhm.
There's not a lot of competition, like at the time you release.
That's right.
Well, and there's not a like Steam. You can get free games, cheap games all the time on the Switch. Games are expensive, so being able to find something that's free to play and then you end up liking it, it's a huge.
Well,
advantage.
and like for Embers of Miriam on Steam, it's like, well, like obviously that's not going to do that great because you have to have a controller, right? Where it's like, well, with Return to Grace, it's like, no, like you can play on mouse keyboard or you can play with a controller. So again, it's like just different games, different audience and different timing. And that's the thing that, like you said, these things take like 3 years to make. At least ours have generally. And so yeah, like trying to predict things is impossible. So probably if you just like followed a trend, I guess, or something like that, like someone in a review is like, this game came too late because it's like this was back in the Edith Finch, and I'm just like, why not? Why can't these games still be made? Like, is it now a good time because there is no Firewatch right now? Like, what about the people who like playing Firewatch? If you like Firewatch, you might like this game, kind of thing. So I think yeah, just don't just go chasing trends, kind of thing.
Yeah, there hasn't been a ton of notable like walking simulator stuff lately. Like the last one, I like there's that Call to the Sea.
Yeah.
And one other one that's on my mind.
Yeah, I can't. There was one made by a European company. I forget right now, but yeah.
So yeah, it's good. Hopefully that timing works out nicely. I guess, is there plans to bring it to other consoles or anything you can share yet, or anything?
Yeah, we like so like everyone's heard accessibility, right? Kind of thing for us. Like, so we want to be like on as many things. So for sure, we're just like looking at what makes the most sense for us. In terms of like who's the right partner or the right platform for that audience or what we're trying to do. So like, well, it's something we want to get it on as many systems as we can is our intention.
Cool. I didn't notice it on my Steam Deck as like do you know what you have to do to get into that, like great for Steam Deck or anything like that, or
I
no?
don't know if there's anything developers can do for that. I don't know how
It's like
that
an
works.
algorithm thing. It's a certain amount of
Or people that
reviews
play
or
it and
people
then there's like a
verifying it. Yeah.
button that says I don't know.
I think if you're big enough, you can apply ahead of time, but probably for smaller companies, I don't know if that would happen. So I don't know if you're starting to wrap this up, Frank, but I just wanted to jump back to, you were talking about the demos, and that's an interesting point because I've been reading stuff recently that people generally think demos are bad, like they hurt sales, because it's more likely someone's going to play the demo and decide I got enough of it or I don't like it, versus like taking a chance and buying it and then they just, whether they like it or not, they're not going to get a refund for it. So did you have any observations on that?
Yeah, I just think it's like a case by case basis. So like Return of Grace, what kind of demo am I going to make for a 2.5 hour game like that? Even sending it to people is hard. Like, where do we start? Like, we want like, when I mean sending it to people, sending it to you guys, like when we didn't have the full game, just like how you have to kind of start at the start, but then there's not enough, like it's more near the end game that shows the game in stride, right? So for that, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. For Embers of Miram, like visibility was a problem. So like it's like, no, we gotta like try to like get people to find out about it. And it worked on the Switch. It was our best selling platform. And if we didn't have a demo, I don't think it would have been. But that doesn't mean that that's what it's like for everyone. So if you were like had a big known game, then yeah, like why take your chances with a demo kind of thing. So I think you just kind of see like ebbs and flows because right now like Next Fest, right? Like that's all about demo. Like everyone said Next Fest. You got to be in Next Fest. Like how could you not be in Next Fest? Have Return of Grace? It's like, well, because we don't really know what kind of demo to make for it, kind of thing. So that's kind of was our answer to it. So yeah, I guess it's like yeah, it's like a case by case and using kind of intuition on.
You'd almost need to make like a prelude. I've seen some companies do like a preload or like a O.1 type pre thing to show off like the intro to the game, or like something that's not even in the game at all.
No,
something
for sure.
else.
Yeah. That would work for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So even like, how did she get on the escape pod or whatever, or maybe like some little thing about while she was traveling there, what happened or something like that.
Or someone else who is in the location with a similar structure or something, like a similar
Everett's story or something like that.
For sure.
I don't have a ton of other questions. My other small thing was the helmet in every version I played?
No, we added that after kind of.
I was going to say, I don't remember that.
Yeah. So actually, I was going to say this before, like when you're talking about the arm and how important that is and all that stuff. And it's like, because I pushed a lot of that arm stuff, and it's because the bouncing and the thing makes your character feel grounded in those and that's why guns, right, in first person. And they do a lot of stuff with additive animations. So like as you're moving, it kind of bounces, and then when you turn, it kind of like it sways like this, and then you kind of add all those animations up in the end, and that gives you this feeling and like Bungie did a really good thing on Destiny where they would like turn them off and you could kind of like see them one by one, and you really saw like when you land and it goes or like it goes boom boom, right? It shows the momentum of it. So that was kind of like a reason I wanted to push that. And then the helmet was another thing that kind of allowed us to, you know, show motion and feel like you were like immersed in this thing. And then people in Reddit are like, get rid of the helmet. And it's like, fine, we put in options, turn off the helmet. I haven't heard anyone complain about it or whatever, but like it's there then. Like if you don't want it, we can turn it off, kind of thing. So
You're talking about just like the outline around the
Well,
outside.
it's a
like almost like
mesh.
the vignette.
Microphone and yeah,
yeah, it's a whole mesh that sits
Yeah,
around.
yeah, but I mean, in game, it just kind of is like a vignette around the outside. That's what people are complaining about.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. But again,
Okay.
like it's like you just got to
Yeah.
pick your battles, right? And it's like, how hard would it be? No, well, it's easy to
Yeah.
turn to hide
True.
that kind of thing and still have it be a shadow caster. So
And
it's
now
like,
it's accessibility.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, so it's just like that was one thing. And if we couldn't do that, then we just, yeah, you have to make a decision, right? Like as you guys know, it's like everyone has kind of different feelings, right? So you kind of have to kind of go through what you think is important for the game, and kind of trust your instinct because you've been working on it for 3 years, kind of thing.
And I love like there's a bend in the glass at one part where it kind of refracts a bit or it distorts. I thought that was a really nice touch as well. So
I'll
So
tell
kind
Sean
of,
tomorrow.
I have one last thing, not kind of related, but you know, you said it's taken about 3 years, lots of stuff. What was the most like difficult part of making this game? Was it like the production aspect? Was there like something about development, design? What would it be?
I guess like the difficult part is finding the voice of the game, and whatever you can do to find that earlier just makes everything after it so much easier. And like I said, it really wasn't until that split kind of personalities, like them all backseat drivers, till the game really found like the right momentum. And I just, you know, wish we could have figured out a way to find that earlier.
Yeah, that
And
was pretty late.
yeah, it was in a way. Like, I mean, it wasn't late because like we hadn't finished the script or anything like that. But just like a bunch of the levels were made, but we didn't have to change anything. It didn't really affect kind of like those narrative beats or anything like that. But just yeah, figuring out ways to find those answers earlier, I think is just you'd have just something even to show even earlier to everyone and get that feedback and know that thing, and then you probably get like faces in earlier because you know that, right? Like the cascading ramifications for like these decisions that happen. So the earlier you can find what is important and what is fun or compelling, then I think the smoother your journey will be in the end. But at the end of the day, I'm pretty happy. Like 2.5 people, you know, made a game kind of like that. I'm super proud.
yeah, I think
to do.
even with Miram, like I don't think people realized how few people worked on that game.
That was 4. That was
Yeah.
4 of us basically.
Yeah.
Same idea. Super proud of that and what that. But people when they tell publishers whatever, like the budget, like they were like, oh my god, like it's crazy, right?
Yeah, and there's no real way to capitalize on those types of things. Like like some people might care, but most of the game market
The audience doesn't care. That's
doesn't
for
care at
sure.
all.
They don't care how much you pay, how
you were
much that game
made or something like that, or but
yeah.
So just with the backseat driver AI thing coming in late, and we've talked about one of the strengths of the game being the voice acting. I'm kind of, and I've never worked on a game where with voice acting and a lot of it. So how many recording sessions? Like what was that process like? Did you have to redo stuff at some point, and how hard easy was that?
So that's like where programmer Paul like talked to Dave about like how like this process works, right? And he's like, oh, I like record like a bunch of it like scratch. I think it's called scratch recording stuff. I'm like, does that take a long time? He's like, yeah. I'm like, what if we just like got text to speech and we just did different like voices, and like Google has like an API that there's like lots that you can do for free, kind of thing like that. So we were able to make a tool that easily just like converted text to speech. So at least it was in the game and you could get the timing. Yes, the text to speech was a little longer than it doesn't have kind of the same flow as like our conversation that we're having right now, but at least you could kind of get a sense of how long things are taking. So we were able to, and with the different voices, and even like there's like they weren't all English like voices so we could make them really sound like different with the text to speech, so you can kind of get a feel for the different personalities. You just couldn't get like emotion or anything like that. So that's the only thing that you had to kind of try to like believe that it was going to happen. So yeah, so we ran with that as long as we could, because it's expensive, because like you call them in, you got to call them in for like minimum 2 hours. Like they have one line, 2 hours, too bad. Like that's kind of how that works with using union voice actors. So we did it all in one shot, and for most of them, and then we had the pickups after kind of thing. That's how we kind of scheduled it out. And then some we were able to just do in one shot, some of the people as well. So yeah, that would have definitely came in late, but I wasn't that stressed about it. I just knew that it was going to work out. Dave's done that with so many games. I was confident. Even the casting process was like insane, like 1,000 people like interviewed or like applied for all that. So he kind of had to like go through that, and he like narrowed them down. He's like thinking these ones. I'm like, whatever, like you got this, you can do this. And then he did a great job directing them, and they did a great job performing, kind of thing.
There's even new, like even newer AI voice act tools now, with like all the new AI tools that are coming on board. And it would have been interesting if you had, found those earlier and incorporated those, and then it would be just like pure AI driven.
Well, we got like feedback from people who are like, the voice acting's a little flat. Like they actually thought it was like voice acting kind of thing. So
Oh.
like they were kind of fooled by it. And we thought about it, but we could just never get the performance from the tool. And like it's not like the voice actors are that, they're not Hollywood kind of like A-list talent, kind of like expensive, crazy things. It was very reasonably priced. So it just is so much easier, just because then you can like direct them, and then they can bring their own kind of feeling into the character. And I think just that when you put it in, it was just like, oh man, this is so much better, right? Like it's just like
Oh, yeah.
all the time. It was like the
Definitely.
most exciting. And when you make a narrative adventure game, like that's like the best part, right? Is that stuff coming in, and you're like, it's just like it just like catapults kind of like the quality to next level.
Yeah, for sure. I doubt this is a thing, but because of the nature of the interaction of the AIs, did you have anyone record together, or was everyone by themselves?
No, like I know in Firewatch they did that because of the interplay, and that was like a
Okay.
big deal. And if we could, you know what, we would have, but it ended up not being. It would be better if we could, but it'd be more expensive.
Yeah, I mean, it felt
But,
pretty
yeah.
seamless. That's why I was curious.
Mhm, mhm.
Notice any like weird transitions or interactions. So that's
Yeah.
pretty great.
I think that's just probably a testament to those actors and their
Yeah.
ability to like play off what they kind of think that those responses would be.
Did you pick did you do Addy first and then play those lines for other people so they knew what they were responding to? Or was it
I
just-
don't know. Dave would know more about that to know the specifics of like what they got sent. I'm not sure on that.
Fair enough. Anyone else have any questions or thoughts?
Just had one more question, which is maybe something should have done earlier, but like could be good just in terms of getting across whether somebody would be into this game. Like what influences were there? Like we've mentioned Firewatch and some similar walking simulator type games, but in terms of like science fiction, like movies, books, were there anything like that you guys were drawing from that could give an idea of what this game is?
Yeah. So so it's like obviously game Firewatch. Like if you like Firewatch, then there's a good chance. Dave read a lot of book, like he had a lot of book kind of reference that I do not know offhand. But I think it was like Arthur C. Clarke, like just a lot of that like 60s kind of science fiction. And then yeah, I'm trying to think of it. There's nothing like off the top, like we saw a bunch of the movies, but like trying to find like utopian retro future movie good like is not easy at all. So that was even like in general it was kind of like hard to find. It was kind of it was more in like the pulp like those the pulp covers, like one of our first covers was kind of inspired by that. It's the that architecture too. I'm drawing a blank on right now, but and Dave's gonna kill me on that one. But yeah,
Brutalist?
pardon?
Brutalist?
But it's more, there's a specific person who is like who did a lot of that stuff, but that was probably like earlier in the project that we were like focused on that, and then after it kind of got its own kind of voice, and so we kind of just followed that pattern.
I mean, I was curious too, like the sort of like the AI as God kind of thing. Like obviously there's definitely like a lot of religious stuff in the game. And I thought that was interesting. And I don't know if you've heard of this or seen this show, Mrs. Davis, that's out recently, but by Damon Lindelof, or at least co-written, I think, by Damon Lindelof. It's kind of similar. At least I've only seen a couple episodes, but the idea that there's one big AI that kind of took over the world and everyone
Okay,
kind of
yeah.
like submitted to it, sort of thing. So I don't know. I got to finish that show, but it seems like it's
You
kind
like
of
it? Is it good?
yeah, it was really
Yeah,
good so
yeah.
far. So
Nice.
Did you take the game to any trade shows this time, or
No, but like for the reason of like,
same thing? You have to get into the game, right? And there's no,
yeah, we just didn't feel like it made sense. And then I don't know about that. And it was good to do it to see. And we made like we found an audience with Embers of Miram there, that if we didn't go, we would have had even less people. But it is expensive. Yeah, I don't know. I'm a little torn on that whole kind of like that experience. Um, it's tough. And then you're not working on the game either, kind of thing like that too, right? So
yeah, no, I was just curious. Like
yeah.
I could see a case for both, really. So
I can too.
was COVID a factor for this? Like, I
Yeah,
mean,
sure. Yeah. Like, I mean, we switched. So we had an office. We've had an office for like, I guess like 4 or 5 years maybe, or something like that. So then we transitioned. Now we always had remote workers, so we had like to be able to get them to VPN into our server. So we couldn't have that. So it's like, okay, well, how are we going to get our source control somewhere? So we figured out how to do that. We got on an Amazon web server. Actually, I think because so we went COVID, and then we still had the office, but we couldn't go in. So I think we just still used that server. So we didn't have to like we weren't down, I guess, for like right away. It wasn't like just a complete switch, but I mean, it used to be face to face with us every day, so we had to get used to kind of what kind of mechanisms worked. And Diana, who we worked with on Embers of Miram, she was early in on the Discord, that's for sure. She was pumping Discord before I ever heard about it. I'm like, we use this other thing, but she was right. Discord does rock, and we use Discord all the time. So, but it's just finding the right tools kind of for our workflow, and finding kind of the right cadence. So like Sean and I, we meet every morning just to kind of go over like, just is there any like business stuff, or just to check in all the time. And then I have my meetings with everyone to be like, what are we working on today? Is it blocked by anything? And just kind of like, there's a little bit of a cadence there that is better to do in person. But then there are advantages to working at home, and in terms of getting other talent. It's a lot easier to do that. It's already to bring people on, kind of thing like that, and just trying to figure out a way to make it work so you don't lose that connection with people. So we gave up our office space, and yeah, we moved our servers onto the cloud and things like that. So it's been a process for sure, and it's a change. I mean, it's been interesting to see kind of how the industry has kind of embraced it. I think I really feel like, especially because we're like in a creative industry compared to like film and TV, who in Toronto, like they were like they couldn't work at all, kind of thing like that. So I consider us the fortunate ones for dealing with that, because it didn't affect us like it did other industries.
yeah, I mean, there was a point in time like when we were at Silicon Knights and stuff, and it just seemed like there's no way video games will ever go remote.
Never.
But I think it happened.
But it did, right? They were forced to, and yeah, they were like, I guess it can. And even like it, like we were doing remote, or we were working with other like other companies all the time, kind of at Silicon Knights too, right? And then like Frank and I were worked on Skylanders too, like so like that was before COVID, and we were working remote with them, and we had our calls with them, and we were productive, and they were able to find like other talent because they were kind of like there's only so many people in Albany, right, or whatever that they could get. So I think it was always probably okay, but yeah, it really forced everyone to see like to in that experiment. And I think some industries it worked better than other ones.
Yep.
All right. I think that's pretty much it for discussing the game. So Return to Grace on Epic, and Steam will say Epic first. You want that Epic cut, right?
Yeah, it's a better rev share, sure.
Yeah. And it's out now. Check it out. And I'm sure if there's any other versions in the future, we'll be talking about it. Let us know if you played it or what you think on the YouTube comments, or if you have any other questions, throw them down there as well. Congrats to you, Paul, and everyone that worked on the game. Very well done. Great game.
Yeah, so I want to say
congrats.
thanks to all three of you guys. You guys were all like big parts of it along the process. I like appreciated kind of your insights along the way, and I always use you guys as a sounding board for all of our future games. So you guys have already seen some of our other pitches, and I'll like include you along the way. And then I guess for people, hopefully people, they kind of got a good sense of what this kind of game is. The trailer should make it pretty obvious if you check it out too. And then just, I guess, if you if review the game if you can on Steam, or like it just those kinds of things help. Just trying to get more awareness to the game.
Nice. Do you want to give out the website, social?
Yeah. So it's probably easiest to go to returntogracegame.com. That's probably the easiest because then they'll have the store links, and it'll have the trailer on it and everything there. So that's kind of your one-stop shop for just seeing if it's something that you'd be interested in. And I hope, yeah, you guys enjoyed hearing kind of the process of it. I think I'm on the Discord server, so I guess like if you guys or if anyone has any questions or anything like that, they can always just send me a message or get a post or something like that going.
Excellent.
Nice.
Awesome. All right. Thanks so much, Paul. And glad we could finally do this after summer game announcement month wrapped up. And look forward to see what Creative Byte Studios is making in the future. All right.
Yeah,
So I think that's going to do it for this episode. Anything else we need to cover?
No, sir.
Cool. We'll see you next time. Thanks for listening or watching. Bye-bye.